Over the past few weeks, the political landscape in the European Union, EU, has seen a flurry of major moves, from intense crackdowns on big tech to support for clean energy and infrastructure reform, and even potential rescue packages for industry. What's happening isn't just bureaucratic change, it's Europe repositioning itself at a crossroads of technology, economy, energy, and global influence. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to EU Politics and hit that bell so you don't miss any of our deep dives into what's shaping Europe's future. One of the headline developments, the EU has launched a formal antitrust investigation into Meta platforms over its recent policy changes for WhatsApp. According to the new rules imposed by Meta, most third-party artificial intelligence (AI) providers will be blocked from using WhatsApp's business solution API, effectively banning chatbots and AI assistants not owned by Meta from serving customers through WhatsApp. Meanwhile, Meta's own chatbot, Meta AI, remains fully available to users. The EU's concern is that this amounts to an abuse of dominance. By cutting off rival AI providers, Meta could stifle competition and fortify its own hold over digital communications space. The investigation covers the entire European Economic Area, EEA, except Italy, which earlier had already opened its own case. Critics of Meta's policy, including small AI developers, warn that once the new rules go into full effect for existing providers from January 15, 2026, services like ChatGPT and Copilot could lose access to WhatsApp's massive user base across Europe, restricting consumer choice and damaging startup innovation. On the other hand, WhatsApp has responded by calling the EU's claims baseless, arguing the AI-related limitations were introduced because third-party AI bots put strain on WhatsApp systems. They also asserted that the broader AI market remains competitive via other channels, not just via their platform. But this is only part of a broader push by the EU. Alongside the probe into Meta, regulators under the EU's sweeping digital regulation framework, the Digital Services Act, DSA, and the Digital Markets Act, DMA, are increasingly holding big tech accountable for transparency, fairness, and potential abuses of power. A striking example, the EU recently slapped a €120 million fine on X, formerly Twitter, run by entrepreneur Elon Musk, for violating transparency obligations under the DSA. The ruling cited failures such as misleading usage of blue-check verifications, inadequate ad transparency, and refusal to grant researchers proper access to public data. This is the first significant enforcement action under the DSA, signaling that the EU is serious about regulating digital platforms, not just in theory, but in action. By fining X and investigating Meta, Brussels seems determined to define and defend fair digital competition and to set the tone for how AI, social media, and communications platforms should operate within, and perhaps beyond Europe. But EU politics isn't confined to tech. Another major area of activity is energy policy and infrastructure. The EU is fast-tracking plans to reform its cross-border electricity network, aiming to unblock bottlenecks that have limited the full potential of renewable energy sources, such as wind and solar. According to a new draft proposal, the bloc wants to modernize and integrate power grids across member states to allow smoother distribution of clean energy. Why is this needed? Because despite heavy investment in renewable power generation, many EU regions still struggle with outdated or fragmented grid infrastructure. This means a significant portion of generated wind or solar energy can't be used effectively wasted. The draft estimates that investing around €5 billion in grid upgrades and network improvements could save the system up to €8 billion in overall costs by 2040. Under these reforms, the EU may even simplify environmental assessment procedures for small-scale renewables and grid-related projects to speed up development. This would help accelerate deployment of cleaner energy solutions, reduce electricity waste, and ultimately help lower energy costs for consumers. This push comes at a critical moment. Energy prices have been volatile across Europe, and many citizens have faced steep bills for years. By coupling green ambitions with pragmatic infrastructure updates, the EU is signaling that climate policy and economic stability can and must go hand in hand. Meanwhile, the economic fabric of certain key European industries is under fresh consideration. Just days ago, according to recent reporting, the European Commission may unveil a new support package for the bloc's automotive sector around mid-December 2025. This proposed package could include support measures to help automakers transition through challenges and, interestingly, may involve a softened version of the planned 2035 phase-out of internal combustion engines, ICEs. If adopted, it would represent a recalibration of the EU's climate-driven timeline in recognition of industrial realities. Why is this significant? On one hand, the EU has long championed a shift toward electric vehicles, EVs, and green transport to meet its climate goals. On the other hand, many automakers, especially in countries with legacy manufacturing industries, are grappling with the costs, labour shifts, and technological overhaul required to move fully electric. Supporting this industry could help preserve jobs, prevent economic shocks, and ensure a smoother transition for workers and consumers alike. But critics may argue the support package dilutes Europe's climate commitment, potentially slowing down the push for cleaner cars. If the 2035 ban on combustion engines is softened, automakers might be less pressured to accelerate EV development, which could in turn slow down emissions reductions across the transport sector. That tension between economic pragmatism and climate ambition lies at the heart of many of the EU's current political balancing acts. Taken together, all these developments, digital regulation, green infrastructure reform, industry support show the EU moving assertively on multiple fronts. The bloc seems more determined than ever to shape the rules of the 21st century, not just in tech, but across climate, energy, industry, and socio-economic policy. What does all this mean for ordinary citizens in Europe and globally? First, for users of digital platforms, the crackdown on big tech could mean more transparency, accountability, and potentially more competition in the AI and social media space. That could translate into better choices, more privacy safeguards, and fewer monopolistic bottlenecks. Second, on energy and environment. If the grid reforms succeed, Europeans may see more affordable clean energy, fewer wastages, a more stable supply a win, not just for climate activists, but for everyday consumers struggling with energy costs. Third, for workers and industry. Balancing climate goals with industrial realities could preserve jobs and ensure a smoother transition during structural shifts, especially in sectors like automotive, though it also raises questions about how green and how fast the transition should be. Finally, and perhaps overarching all, the EU's moves reflect a vision of sovereignty. Digital sovereignty, energy sovereignty, economic resilience, and regulatory independence. In a world where global tech giants and geopolitical adversaries exert enormous influence, the EU is trying to carve out its space. So what should we watch next? Here are a few pointers. The outcome of the antitrust investigation into Meta and possibly others, which could reshape who controls access to AI services on major platforms. The enforcement trajectory of the DSA and DMA, fines, decisions, and how foreign tech firms respond. Whether the EU finalises and deploys its electricity grid reforms, and whether investment and infrastructure upgrades actually deliver the promised savings and clean energy gains. The content and details of the upcoming auto industry support package, especially any shifts in the timeline for combustion engine phase-out and what that might mean for EV adoption across Europe. Broader geopolitical dynamics, how US-EU tensions evolve, how global tech companies adapt, and how Europe balances regulation with innovation. To wrap up, we are witnessing a transformative moment in European politics. The EU is no longer just a trading bloc or political union. It is asserting itself as a regulatory superpower, a mover in climate policy, and a global player deciding how the future of technology, energy, and industry will be shaped. If you want to stay updated on all these developments, from Brussels to Berlin to Paris to beyond, make sure you subscribe to EU Politics. Stay with us for more in-depth analysis, breakdowns, and forecasts. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and keep watching the horizon.